All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Office of Refugee Resettlement, Refugee Children and Youth Service Team's presentation of the Notice of Funding Opportunity application process for the National Refugee Children and Youth Resilience Program. My name is Marta Sebgoya, and I'm the program analyst at ORR. I'll be joined by my colleague, Elizabeth Mitaro, who will be co-presenting with me today. Before we begin, I want to let you know that we are not actually taking questions today. Our hope is that we'll cover enough and that we'll be able to clarify some of the things throughout the presentation. If you do have questions, please reach out to me, the project officer, Mata Sebgoya at acf.hhs.gov. We'll also have our contact information at the end of the presentation. We also want to remind you that the webinar does not take place of reading and understanding the Notice of Funding Opportunity, this NOFO in its entirety. When putting together your application, please be sure to read the NOFO and follow those instructions closely. And in the event that there's a discrepancy between the webinar and the NOFO itself, please refer to the NOFO. It does take precedence. That being said, we're delighted to invite everyone and to announce the publication of this new NOFO for 2024. The National Refugee Children and Youth Resilience Program. This NOFO is part of our strategic priority to make HHS strategic priority to make funding opportunities more accessible and to align with HHS-wide initiatives to redesign and streamline our funding opportunities. Today, my colleague and I will be going through the presentation in 3 parts. I'll cover a bit of a history about ORR, the content of the NOFO itself, and the requirements, and she and Elizabeth will be going over the application review process. Slide 1, please. Thank you. So ORR is located, as some of you may know, within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The mission of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is to enhance the health and well-being of all Americans by providing for effective health and human services and by fostering sound, sustained advances in the sciences underlying medicines, public health, and social services. ORR is within the Administration for Children and Families. And our mission is to promote the health, well-being, and stability of refugees and accompanied children and other eligible individuals and families through culturally competent, trauma-informed, and strengths-based services. Just a bit of an introduction about ORR. So ORR was created by the Refugee Act of 1980. And we have 2 bureaus at the moment, the Refugee Program and the Unaccompanied Children's Program. Our vision is that all new arrivals are welcome with equitable, high-quality services and resources so they can maximize their potential. The core priorities, the services for ORR are cash and medical assistance to support refugees as they enter the workforce and integrate into their new communities up to 12 months after arrival. Early employment as a path to self-sufficiency and long-term integration, economic mobility as well. Intensive strength-based case management, health, mental health and well-being assessments and services, services for children and youth to ensure a successful transition to adulthood, as well as integration for the elderly and using a whole family approach, and foster care for unaccompanied minors. And now I'm going to go into the actual content of the National Refugee Children and Youth Resilience Program, the program that you are planning to apply for. This program, the aim of this program is to expand the capacity of refugee serving agencies and resettlement communities across the country to provide, again, resiliency-focused, evidence-based, trauma-informed and child welfare-centric services and interventions. The funding recipient will provide training and technical assistance, partnership and outreach, crisis intervention and case consultations, assessments and evaluation services to promote the well-being, stability, resiliency, and successful integration of the children and youth in the United States. As you know, the NOFO published on May 9th. The application deadline is July 9th. And so that's about a month from now. The expected award date is August 30th, and with a hope to start the program on launch the program September 30th. Next slide, please. The mechanism we're using is a cooperative agreement with the ceiling of 2 million. The estimated total program funding is 2 million, and the minimum amount is 1.5 million. And this is a funding, for funding periods of 60-month period of performance with 12 months budget periods. So who's eligible to apply? Public and private nonprofit organizations, faith-based and community organizations that meet the eligibility requirements. And there's more information as well under the initial review in the NOFO itself. And who's not eligible to apply? Obviously, individuals, including sole proprietorships and foreign entities. About the cost sharing. So this program does not require a cost sharing. But if you do choose to include cost sharing funds, we won't consider it during the review. However, we will hold you accountable for any funds you add, including through reporting. You do have to follow through on your promise. You must include your funds when filling out your federal financial reports. If you don't provide your promise account, we may have to decrease your award amount or use other actions enforcement. Next slide, please. So the program overall goal, as I mentioned before, is to build resiliency, to build resiliency among refugee children and youth to ensure the successful integration into the United States. And this is going to be done through various preventions and intervention measures, again, that promote the recipient's project, that promote the child well-being, and this is going to be done, the recipient projects will accomplish 3 main objectives. I'm reading it here. Strengthening the child welfare capacity and expertise of refugee serving agencies, providing TTA, like improving communication and coordination between local child welfare agencies, mainstream service providers, and refugee serving agencies across the country, that they are, and to make sure that they're educated on and can help resolve issues impacting refugee children, youth, and their families. And the other aspect is also to ensure that refugee children, youth, and their families across the country who are at risk or are in crisis have access to and receive services that promote recovery, child welfare, and protection. The children and youth that we're hoping the recipient can reach, or the refugees, asylees, Cuban or Haitian entrants, Iraqi or Afghan special immigrant, American, certified victim of trafficking, humanitarian parolee from Ukraine or Afghanistan, and other as applicable by law. So with the activities, the recipient must make sure that these activities are really resiliency-focused services that target the individual's personal strengths to help them overcome risk and adversity. They must be culturally responsive, and be able to understand the different nuances, cultural nuances, and also the different phases of cultural adjustment. The recipient must be able to look beyond their own biases and be really savvy and knowledgeable about other cultures, and be developmentally appropriate, as children may be at different stages of their integration journey. And also, you know, the services must be appropriate for a child's cognitive, emotional, and developmental level and capacity as well. So the activities will fall into 4 buckets, but most importantly, we are hoping that the recipient has a national reach and can provide these activities into the 4 focuses that I've already mentioned: training and technical assistance again, partnerships and outreach, crisis intervention and case consultation, assessment, and evaluation. I'm now going to move on to the next session on how to apply. We hope that you already have a SOM.gov. Please begin the process today, because it can take up to several weeks. To register, go to SOM.gov, entity registration. Do remember also that you have to have a unique entity identifier. From the same page, I think you can also click on the entity registration checklist for the information you need to register. Again, we'll provide all these links at the end of the presentation as well. You do have to have an active account with grants.gov. Please refer to the Quick Start Guide for applicants once you're there. The application package itself should have all the forms that you need. You can find it online. Go to search grants at grants.gov and search for opportunity number HHS 2024 ACF or RRB 0137 and click on the package tab. If you're not able to use grants.gov to download application materials, you may request them from the grants management's contacts. If you're unable to apply through grants.gov, if for some reason you are only able to submit a paper application, make sure that you get an exemption for the paper submissions. We will review each application to make sure it meets its basic requirements. We won't consider an application that has as a request of funding above the award ceiling, is submitted after the deadline, which is July 9th, 2029 at 11:59 Eastern Time. So just bear that in mind. And if it's from the individual applicants, the individual and also foreign entity. And if it's received in paper form with no exemption, if the prospective applicants don't get an exemption, that is also grounds for denial. The application contents and formats. So you'll submit 2 files plus the other required forms in the application package. File 1, project narrative attachments. And this has a project summary, project narrative, line item budget, and budget narrative. Again, all this information, as you have seen, is in the NOFO. The required format as well, you can find that on page 21. And next are all the forms that you need to fill and to provide. This is, I believe, on page 31 of the NOFO. Please, again, we really ask that you read the NOFO carefully. All the instructions should be clear on there. Again, this is the applications checklist is on that step 3, I believe, of the NOFO, and you have all the instructions very well laid out for you. Our contact information, which will also, again, next slide. So again, my name is Mata Meza Sebgoya. I can be reached at matasebgoya@acfhhs.gov. If you have any questions about applying or the process and having issues with grants.gov, they provide 24/7 support. You can call them on that number on the screen and just give them a ticket number. Also, for same goes with sun.gov. Again, thank you very much for your attention. If you have questions after the webinar, please don't hesitate to contact me, and my colleague Elizabeth and I will be sure to respond to your questions. And I'll pass it on to Elizabeth now to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mata. That was very helpful, and I've put some information in the chat, but please continue to add any applicable links or other information that might be helpful as we go. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the application review process. So the way that the application will be reviewed is that a panel will review all of the applications that pass the initial review. And the members of this panel will use the criteria in this section for their assessment. So the need for assistance, objectives, outcomes, approach, and timeline will make up 45 points of the review. Organizational capacity and plan for oversight of federal award funds and activities is 20 points. Activities, evaluation plan, and logic model is 15 points. Dissemination plan is 5 points. A line item budget and budget narrative is 15 points, and bonus points will be an additional 10 points. And I will be going through step by step for each of these criteria in just a moment. So we're going to start with the need for assistance, objectives, outcomes, approach, and timeline, which again is 45 points. So in reviewing your need for assistance, objectives, outcomes, approach, and timeline, the reviewers will consider the extent to which you clearly demonstrate a thorough and specialized understanding of resettlement challenges affecting refugee children, youth, and their families, and of the role of and challenges impacting the refugee serving agencies that support them, as well as this population's needs for assistance. And that'll be between 0 and 15 points. Also, how the extent to which you clearly demonstrate a feasible approach to addressing and achieving the goal of the program, which will be 0 to 5 points. Describe how you will carry out the National Refugee Children and Youth Resilience Program, addressing each of the required activities and all the required information mentioned in the program description and approach. So for training and technical assistance, describe a clear and sound plan for developing and managing the required TTA activities to build the capacity of refugee serving agencies To support refugee children and youth and their families, that'll be 0 to 5 points. Partnership and outreach, describe a clear and sound plan for implementing and managing the required partnership and outreach activities, 0 to 5 points. For crisis intervention and case consultation, describe a clear and sound plan for implementing and managing the required crisis intervention and case consultation activities, 0 to 5 points. Assessment and evaluation, describe a clear and sound plan for implementing and managing the required assessment and evaluation activities, and propose specific outcomes to measure the effects of the program, again, up to 5 points. Identify a reasonable and realistic timeline and milestones for implementing the project activities, up to 5 points. And that will make up the 45 points of that section. As for organizational capacity and plan for oversight of federal award funds and activities, in reviewing your organizational capacity and plan for oversight, the reviewers will consider the extent to which you clearly demonstrate all required capabilities discussed in the organizational capacity section, including experience in your team and subrecipient network, if applicable, in developing, implementing, administering, and evaluating similar projects to this one that build resiliency among refugee children and youth to ensure their successful integration in the United States. They'll also be looking for evidence that your team has the organizational capability to carry out their roles effectively, and describe your organization's current capacity through filled positions and describe vacant positions to be filled. They'll also be looking for evidence of a process by which subject matter experts will be identified. Additionally, demonstrate a plan to ensure your compliance with federal requirements and your administrative and fiscal oversight of federal funds. This should include a record system that will ensure accountability of funds. And if proposing to utilize a subrecipient network, describe a plan to make subawards to agencies with expertise in similar initiatives. We'll want to see how you describe the work that the subrecipients will conduct and how you'll monitor and evaluate their work as described in the organizational capacity and plan for oversight sections. The next section that will be looked at in the panel review is activities, evaluation plan, and logic model for 15 total points. In reviewing your activities, evaluation plan, and logic model, reviewers will consider the extent to which you clearly describe a rigorous evaluation plan, including reliable measurement plan, details about data collection and management, and a theory of change. Include details on inputs, activities or services, outputs, and outcomes that are clear and meaningful, reasonable, and realistic to meet program goals. Identify potential obstacles to implementing the project performance evaluation plan and how you will address them. Develop a logic model for designing, managing, and evaluating the project that meets the requirements identified in the logic model section. Describe how you will collect and safeguard protected, personally identifiable information and other sensitive information as outlined in the protection of sensitive or confidential information section. And that'll be up to 15 points. The next section that will be looked at is the dissemination plan for up to 5 points. So in reviewing the dissemination plan, reviewers will consider the extent to which you clearly describe an effective and thorough plan to raise awareness about the National Refugee Children and Youth Resilience Program and its goals and services, and disseminate products to key target audiences. Identify creative and impactful ways to collaborate and partner with entities that support refugee children, youth, and their families during resettlement, according to the activities required in the partnership and outreach section, and outline a dissemination timeline and allocate sufficient staff time and budget for dissemination activities. Next will be the line item budget and budget narrative for up to 15 points. In reviewing the line item budget and narrative, reviewers will consider the extent to which you clearly propose a budget that aligns with the proposed program activities, justify the amount requested, describing how categorical costs are derived, demonstrate that costs are reasonable and critical to carrying out your project, include the program-specific details mentioned in the line item budget section, again, up to 15 points. And then the bonus point section is up to 10 points. If you include this information within your organizational capacity section, you may receive bonus points and priority consideration. Reviewers will consider the extent to which you demonstrate experience incorporating the lived experience of refugee children, youth, and their families into service design and provision to build resiliency among refugee children and youth to ensure their successful integration into the United States, up to 5 points, and demonstrate experience deploying and responding to emergencies and or traumatic incidents impacting a refugee child, youth, and or their family in locations throughout the United States. Up to 10 points. So that brings us to a close of our presentation content at this time. Again, we are unable to answer any questions outside of what is included in the NOFO. And if you have any questions after reviewing the NOFO and after the completion of this webinar, please email Mata. Her email is on the screen and in the chat. I can put it in the chat again for your awareness, but it's also published in the NOFO. Our grants management contact is Bridget Shea Westfall, and her email is there as well, which we can also put in the chat. And Bridget is who you can reach out to if you have any questions regarding grants management in particular. Repeating again, grants.gov and sam.gov information here so that you have it. It's very important to follow all of the specific guidance related to the grants.gov and sam.gov submission outlined in the NOFO. And we have some reference websites here for your awareness. We recommend looking at the HHS website, the ACF website, the ORR website, ACF funding opportunities and NOFOs, how to apply for a grant, property guidance, grants.gov accessibility information, Code of Federal Regulations, and the US Code. We can see if we're able to get those hyperlinks for you in the chat. And let's see, I think we should be able to do that for you in just a moment. So from there, for additional information, you can visit our website at acf.hhs.gov/ORR or the ORR grants page. The contact information again for Mata is available there. If we're not able to put the hyperlinks in the chat and you would like to receive the hyperlinks, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to email them to you directly. And we wanted to thank you for taking the time to join us today for this webinar. Best of luck in your applications. And again, if you have additional questions that were not answered during today's webinar, please let us know. Again, we won't be able to provide specific guidance on anything that is not already written in the NOFO. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. All right. Thank you.